Welcome to the Human Condition. I'm Sean Davis. Vince is out on expedition with his kids over in Europe, and today we have our first guest. I'm going to let him introduce himself. Good friend of mine, Justin Cole.
Thank you, Sean, for inviting me onto the show, man. I appreciate it. Honored that you feel I would be an adequate replacement. Just about myself, grew up blue collar, lower middle class, two great loving parents. I'm a person in long-term recovery. Have a bachelor's in social work, master's in social work, certified alcohol and drug counselor, and certified trauma practitioner. Currently work in clinical social work. And, when you asked me to be on here and, knowing and talking to you and watching some of the episodes with you and Vince, and you allowing me to choose a topic, it was easy for me to want to get in and dive into the idea of anxiety and it being the most prevalent mental health disorder in the nation, especially prevalent in America. Many causes and conditions. When it comes down to the human condition, and anxiety is what I think may be the epidemic, and hopefully something that leads to a greater human evolution in the future. That's also, I don't identify much with, any titles or degrees. Mostly just, try to identify with being a human being that is super curious about other human beings and their lives, and the evolution of society and what led us to where we are now, and certainly being a dad, I'm concerned about where the condition leads us into the future. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So let's just get right into it. A lot of us, I think anxiety comes in more forms now than anything. I think just by the environment that we're living in today, when you have single-parent households or even two-parent households, to make things, everyone's working. Everyone's working. There's a lack of time. There's more confusion. There's more confusion amongst adults,
right,
with children. Children see that. I think children can inherit a lot of stuff. And I think, you can even go back to the womb. If a mother who's pregnant is having a lot of anxiety, and the life that she's living is chaotic while she's pregnant, a lot of that will transfer over to the newborn. And then you still have it in the DNA almost. And then as we get older in our rearing type years, watching society causes panic.
Sure. Sure.
Watching media. I remember watching Ronald Reagan get shot in 1980. They cut into Bugs Bunny that night, and it was like some serious shit. Like, my parents were watching TV.
Right.
President's been shot. We're like, whoa. Some things, as you see the news, it creates fear.
Sure.
Unsettling. And then if you're constantly bombarded with that as a youth, I'm only going to have more anxiety.
Right.
Especially if you have anxiety underneath the household and stuff, then it just multiplies. Then, for my instance, I'm 13, socially awkward, moved to new school. I don't can't really relate with other humans. Vodka was my solution. And I ran that play as long as I could,
Mm-hmm.
until it caused problems.
Of course. Same here.
Yeah.
Um, I think, when you brought up the news, I stay away from watching the news. I get my news as it comes, secondhand. A lot of the times, definitely causes me distress in my life. The the quote that you put up, I think the way society is led is, I just don't know if we were designed to live in such a loud and chaotic environment like most are, both in households and in communities. As far as causes, there's very little, and from what I know, to suggest that anxiety is brought on by anything genetic. It is mostly developmental. It is early childhood experience. It's a learned behavior. It's something that's modeled. We tend to cope with it the way that we see our parents and those that are closest to us cope with it. I think it's increasingly gotten worse. And one thing, biologically, anxiety is meant. Us as human beings, anxiety was meant to be something good. It's an indicator to us. Fear, and worry is necessary, obviously, for our survival. Two big influences of mine currently. Jordan Peterson has a lot of great information. He's much more analytical and cynical, I would say, in his approach, but I think he's right on. I also respect and study a lot of Eckhart Tolle, more of anxiety as a result of identification with thought. So creating scenarios and worries in our minds that about the future that are probably not even going to happen. I think this has become habitual, and it becomes habitual in people's lives as individuals, but it's also as a society. I think in America especially, it's become this habitual mental conduct to live up to certain expectations, to live up to a certain potential, to have these pressures, and with that comes this identification with thinking and creating these scenarios in my mind so I can meet your expectations or meet my parents' expectations or meet the world's expectation of me that for example, that I go to school and go to college and get a great job and have a family, and I think through that we have this plague really that causes us to stay trapped, to stay victim to our minds, to our thinking, and creating. I like the term. I don't know where it came from. It's not my term, but it's misuse of imagination. There's a misuse of imagination where I let it run rampant, and I create these scenarios, and the body doesn't know the difference. Eckhart Tolle example is if I'm standing in the room with a tiger, that I'm meant to feel anxiety in that situation.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I should be scared shitless, and I should want to run out of the room. And anxiety is in us for that purpose. But many of us, 40 million Americans approximately, probably the number is much greater than that. We create tigers in the room in our minds on a daily basis, almost for most of us, all day, every day, until some solution is found, some awakening is had, or some intervention of some kind is made through various means.
I think I think the systems that are in place cause a lot of anxiety and fear. You know, as you're going to school when you're young, if you don't get educated, if you don't continue your education, you're going to be poor. You won't
Yeah.
be able to provide. You
You're not
won't be
going to
able to
be
do this,
anything.
and
Yep.
they feed you things that aren't even attached to your gift set. You know, I believe that we're all brought here with a certain set of skills and a certain set of gifts that are unique
Sure.
to me.
Yep.
And a lot of times I believe in the system and stuff. It's like, forget about your gifts. This is what you need to do. You need to get this, go through elementary, go through middle school, go through high school, get into college, go into debt, get this job. And it could be so far from your gifts. And in the same time, while I'm not using my gifts and I'm doing something that might be the opposite of what I should be doing, I'm going to have a struggle. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have natural anxiety because it's not in flow with my spiritual self. I'm living in this material based society that's got all these levels,
Right.
you know, and
Yep.
how to achieve these levels
And most of them are there in place for us
for control.
to yeah, and as a false coping, to distract from life instead of interacting with life. I think about that a lot. Um, Sitting in front of the TV as opposed to going on an adventure or creating some experience for myself. Entertainment and we could blame we could sit here all day
Yeah.
and blame it on a ton of things, but it comes down to the individual making a choice, I believe, to having and building some awareness around that. Yes, a person making some admission to themselves that, regardless of the pressures that have been placed upon me, either by my family or by society or the world, I have a choice to believe in this egoic mind that's telling me a lie, that's building a false scenario in my head, that's trying to alleviate some future emotional pain that I might probably will never experience. And even if I do experience, it's probably not going to be as fucking bad as it would have been otherwise. How I create it in my mind. But I think it comes down, regardless, we have our environment, we have how we are and where we are. And for myself, I choose to want to live within that and not be blind to it, to have the veil lifted, to be awake to the fact that, yes, my mind still creates these scenarios sometimes of things that will never happen. But just having an individual make that admission to themselves, I think, is the biggest first step. I mean, it's similar to recovery. I mean, we make an admission to ourselves before any further steps are made. That's, we're building awareness of the truth that I have a choice to believe that this tiger is in the room or I don't. And I can start telling myself the truth and using practices, whether it be therapy or whether it be, meditation or mindfulness is very popular now, some sort of emotional regulation, to be able to bring the truth to the forefront of my mind so that fear or that unneeded worry can fall to the background, I think is at least the beginning. And I know, and you and I discussed prior to this having some conversation about the overuse of prescription medication and not just opiates for pain, but benzos, There's also this laziness within our culture that, man, I can go to my primary care physician and get a bottle of 30 Xanax. Why would
I want to work
why
on
would I,
myself?
why would I want to spend why would I want to spend 4 or 5 hours a week changing my lifestyle and working on my
Right.
behavior and my cognitive ability and working towards some sort of awakening? Why would I even bother doing that when I can
Take
walk?
a pill. Just give me the pill.
Just give me
It's
the pill.
easier.
Yep.
You know, no one I think that a lot of this is people's perception of time is very skewed, and it takes time to heal. Everyone in this today's society is always, give me the quick fix. I want to be fixed now. You know, it might take going to a therapist for 6 to 8 months to unravel the tiger. You know, to get the tiger out of the room, it may take 6 to 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
It may take 6 to 8 months to realize that tiger isn't really real, that I made it up myself. But I had to have someone show me that I am not my thoughts,
Right.
and I am not my thinking. And that right there, that type of level of consciousness is still rare.
Mm-hmm.
You start going out into the real world and telling people that you're not your thoughts and you're not your mind, they're going to look at you like you're
Who am
crazy.
I?
Yeah. Well, what do you mean? You know, and the
Makes
thing
no
is,
sense to me.
right.
Right.
Because up in here is
Where I live.
Right. You know,
Yeah.
and I have it a particular way, and I've had it a particular way for a long time. It may change from circumstance to circumstance in different realms and different traumas. It may create something different, but for the most part, you know, until a crisis happens, most people don't want to change.
Sure, and I think there's value in that pain as well. I mean, I know you and I agree upon this. I mean, the scenario, the old adage of like the lobster shedding its shell, it doesn't do that until the pressure gets bad enough. When the pain gets bad enough, you know, my worry is that when that pressure happens, that people choose that easy fix instead of evolving into a certain level of awakening, to working on themselves and putting effort, whatever that effort is. I mean, even as a clinician, I'm not even saying that that's the right move for everybody. And then I'm not discounting that, you know, brain chemistry, and there's not a certain level of population that medications are beneficial. Absolutely. You know, I don't want to go to extremes, and I don't want to go off on tangents too much, but I do believe, and my hope is that pain is used to be learned from. And there's a theory out there, and I like to believe it. It gives, as a cynical guy, it gives me optimism to think that the next step in our human evolution is that we achieve awakening without pain. That at some level, at some time in the future, whether, you know, I have a 7-year-old daughter, whether it's in her age or her children's age or whatever, that people are awake to the fact that they are not their thinking, that the misuse of imagination and the scenarios created are not necessary, and that I can still learn and grow and strive to be my authentic and true self without having to experience a shitload of pain to push me there.
So we can break it down to something of the nature of accepting pain as the hardship to peace, but without having to experience the pain. Trying to find that peace and serenity without pain.
Right.
Get the awakening early.
I mean, heaven on earth, right?
Right, and know that pain is just part of the process.
Right.
You know, that loss is part of the process. Anxiety, having some level of fear is going to be what it's going to be. We all going to have to experience it and just be awakened to the fact that these things will occur, and that I have a set of tools learned somehow, some way to help me heal through this process?
Mm-hmm. I mean, life is tragic. I mean, life is always going to be tragic. You know,
Taoism,
like,
Taoism, they
yeah.
say life is suffering. You know,
I mean, yeah, yeah, and I debate whether like pain is necessary, suffering is optional. I think it's just it's part of living life. You don't escape tragedy. You inevitably are going to lose people that you care about. Relationships are going to end. Expectations you have for yourself aren't end up going to be getting met. The list goes on and on and on. Life is tragic, and that's where I kind of latch on more to a Jordan Peterson of just, especially with young men, finding purpose, just finding a purpose, taking some sort of responsibility in the world, finding your place in the world, like you said, like um, using my talents and seeing where those talents fit into the world instead of um, having expectation, whatever that quote is that God's uh, my talents are God's gifts to me. How I use those talents are my gift back to Him, or the universe, however you want to look at it. And living from a place where that alleviates, I think, a lot of the pressure and anxiety that is learned. But regardless of that, I think this is always going to come down to um, an individual choice, an individual awakening, and then at some point, my hope is that as a collective, whether it be in in America or just in certain communities, I think it's already happening collectively, where people are awakening at a much greater rate. And I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility. Like I said, whether it happens or doesn't happen, just for me personally, it gives me a more optimistic view of the future, not only for myself but my child, that she won't have to experience the pain I had to experience, and so on and so on. And I think history has shown that. I just think that somehow, like, our parents' generation and their parents' generation dealt with it in different ways, and life in a lot of ways was much simpler then. Social media, even though we're doing a podcast on social media right now, information wasn't as abundant. You weren't inundated with all
right?
this.
Chaos.
You weren't
It's
being
chaos.
bombarded with chaos,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you still had pressures and expectations, but our parents lived in a way that was simpler. So I think if we're going to continue on, and I got no beef with technology and the direction that technology is going. I have my stances. I have my admiration for it. Certainly have my fucking concerns about it. But at the same time, I think that there's can be an optimistic view despite that 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 the generations ahead can awaken and can find solutions to anxiety, free of medication, seeking to live a simple life, seeking to live a life that gives them meaning, whatever that is for the individual. I think it's such an interesting thing to think about, that it's so individualized, it's so personalized, but there's so many commonalities at the same time. I don't know if that makes sense. this conundrum that comes with anxiety, that there's so many similarities between the people that experience it, but it's so personal. You know what I mean?
They own it.
At the same time,
It's
it's
it's unique for me.
Like my anxiety is so personal to me, and there's no way you could possibly understand it. But there are so many commonalities, and whether that's just what that is, or or it is because nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to say, like, have conversations that you and I have on a daily basis that are like, hey, Sean, I'm all fucked up in the head about this. Let me get it out for a while. Tell me your perspective and reach out for support. I mean, I think it's rare, and I certainly am grateful. Like, I have you and I have other men in my life like you, that we're able to share openly and honestly. It's the like our guru
at work,
supervisor at work, the Sangha. The community of people. It takes a community, and it takes a voice, and it takes an openness to be able to talk about these things and shine light on them. Let people know that they're not alone in their fear. They're not alone in their worry. That finding some admission or some awakening around it is very much possible. I mean, really, like, why I wanted to come on here. I mean, and that there are solutions, and the solutions may be difficult, and the solutions may be more painful, but there's always risk. You know what I mean? There's risk of staying in my anxiety and living a fucking miserable life. And there's also risk of change, of who I'm going to become. If I awaken and start disidentifying with my thinking and to just be present in the moment, there's fear in that as well. So so I think it's funny that people choose to live. It's like I think I've heard Jordan Peterson give this example as well. Like, if I'm in a dead-end job that I hate, there's a risk of putting my resume together. There's a risk of going out and looking for a new job. Am I going to find a new job? What's it going to be? Who are the people? Who am I going to work with? There's all these scenarios, this list of fear that I create in my head. But there's also the risk of living the rest of my life in this dead-end fucking job that's making me miserable every day, and I wake up and I'm completely depressed. So there's risk. There's risk on both sides. And I don't think it's funny. I think it's tragic that people choose the easy risk, if that makes sense. Like, I choose to stay in my fear. I choose to stay in my excessive worry, as opposed to choose a different path, to work toward a different path. It's the same as recovery as well. Same as getting, a lot of similar. There's risk in continuing to shoot heroin in my arm, and there's risk to drinking a fifth of Jack Daniels every day. That I might die, but people that aren't addicts or alcoholics don't some understand, but there's risk in who I'm going to become as well. And when I don't have this as a solution, how the hell am I going to get through life? How am I going to feel good about myself when this, whatever this is, this substance, and doesn't even necessarily always have, we know it's not just drugs and alcohol. It's, addiction to many certain things, distraction instead of interaction, whether that be work, job, money seeking, material.
Material's always
identification with some sort of form of the world identification with not only thinking but with some aspect of the so-called American dream that was fed, um, and has continued to be fed. That we identify with the house we live in, the neighborhood we live in, the car we drive, the identification with all these material, Eckhart Tolle calls it form, identification with form that causes anxiety. That's what places the pressure or expectation on. I have to live in this certain neighborhood. I gotta maintain this certain status quo, or else I'm a failure.
Terrence McKenna calls it culture, and he was real big on. There's a lot of different interviews with him, and he'd say you have to kill your culture, kill the things that you allow yourself to be defined as or identify. That wipe away the neighborhood you live in, forget all titles. That really you're just a spiritual being here on earth to live out your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it is. And anything else doesn't really matter.
Right.
Because as I start to allow things to define me, it's only going to cause anxiety with kind of how my expectations and levels and statuses need to grow. If I just completely wipe away that type of thinking and just know that I'm on this journey and I'm going to do the best I can with the gifts I got, and I'm going to return these gifts to my God, and I'm going to do my part, take my responsibility. And I'm the piece with the responsibility is like there's always got to be the finance attached to the responsibility. If I find my purpose, well,
Sure.
maybe my purpose won't make me that much money. So then the fear and the anxiety comes in because you're already spent the money in your mind. It's I'm not going to be able to afford this. I'm not going to be able to do that, which is all bullshit.
To some extent. I mean,
I always believe that if you truly are living your purpose and utilizing the gifts that God gave you,
prosperity will come.
Prosperity will come and
Sure.
abundance will come because that's just the law of abundance. And so, it's interesting. I am very fortunate to, have other men I can talk to about stuff,
Mm-hmm.
And
Mostly relationships.
Yeah, yeah. But
not just with women, but with everybody we encounter. It's always a lot of anxiety and stress. Also, I think can't be discounted by the fact that it's initiated a lot through relationships. Work relationships, relationships with family, not intimate relationships, of course, but a lot of it's initiated with that. And it's funny that you and I find purpose. I know you and your purpose is in alignment with mine, that we're here to serve others, and that's our purpose in whatever capacity that looks like for us, and may evolve for you and I as either one of us go into the future. But I think at the foundation will always be a purpose to serve others and to serve our communities, and but also causes you the greatest, it causes us the greatest amount of, for myself, the greatest amount of distress as well. Relationships and maintaining those relationships, and for me, balance is always the solution. Moving out to the woods recently and but still coming in and being able to balance like a certain level of solitude with then coming into the city and serving my community and serving other people, but also being able to go out, the old I can't take care, I can't serve anybody without taking care of myself first, and I can't lead anybody toward don't know if we can ever really lead anybody toward awakening. It's you know, I don't expect by coming on here to do that. I just came on here to basically just have a cool ass discussion with you and try and explore, like, you know, the possibilities moving forward that I think have the potential to happen, and that whatever somebody believes their purpose or their seeking of their authentic self is for them in their life, that they put effort into doing that, and that's a possibility, and the expectation or pressure that was placed on them is all just you know, the misuse of their imagination. It's all false, most of it, and
I think there's a lot of shifting going on in the world as it is right now. I do believe more people are being awakened,
mm-hmm.
and I almost believe it's kind of like a duty to empower others.
Sure.
Empowering, I believe, is the greatest thing you can do for another human being. Believing in someone through the journey and the trials and the tribulations that they go through while they're dealing with the anxiety and the fear and stuff. Empowerment is so vital.
Sure.
For spiritual awakening. I needed someone to kind of lead me and believe in me and believe in the possibilities that dwelled inside me
mm-hmm.
for me to believe it myself.
Mm-hmm.
And
mm-hmm.
even then, I'll tell you the truth, I can't necessarily say I believed it.
Right.
You know,
right. Mm-hmm.
I had to prove to myself
mm-hmm.
a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know,
we still are, hopefully.
Yeah. You know, my old man was always real big, you know, like I remember being a kid and, you know, I want to grow up, be like you, and
Right, yeah.
And I remember my dad like, no. I want you to go further than me. You got to go further.
Mm-hmm.
Go farther than I've ever been.
Right,
like, what's the point of just meeting me where I'm at?
Right.
You need to go further.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of, that's the approach I take with everyone that I encounter. You know, I do work in recovery, is that I try to empower all these dudes to go further than me, to go reach it as far as you can,
mm-hmm.
and give it away while you're doing it as well.
Right.
I believe it's the only way that a true planetary shift in consciousness can overcome things of like anxiety epidemic and these things that the environment, you have to be so empowered that you empower a community to change your thinking and to change the cycle of anxiety.
Sure. I still think it happens on an individual level. You know, something I was taught and I believe in school, are a couple important things were that everyone's the expert in their own life. Like I said earlier, like someone's own anxiety is so personal to them. Even if it's the same across the board, it's still so personal to them. And to also just allow them to be the expert in their life, to be curious. I think that's what I love the most about my job and my talent that I was given, that I found, was that I was just curious. I have this curiosity about people and their lives and their experience and what they've been through. And like, you know, a lot of times I don't even feel like I need to have some profound solution for them. Just listening, just like you said, you know, I think a lot of empowerment comes just through listening and letting them know that, you know, what you've been through, however horrific, however tragic, doesn't need to define you moving forward. Yes, it's part of your experience. We all have our pain, It's our pain is all relative to each of us, but in the process of moving forward, being able to share the truth, my truth that I believe is that I don't have to victimize myself and attach myself to that pain and to that false belief system and to that anxiety that I create, and to all those scenarios that are not going to happen. But through work, I can do something else. And through work, I can find awakening and find my own truth, whatever that means to me, you know, and the listening and the curiosity and just being present with somebody, like even with you here right now, just being present in this moment. And like right now, I'm not thinking about, you know, I do have an hour plus whatever the fuck drive home tonight, you know, and I could easily be sitting here right now worrying about that. And past me would be sitting here worrying about that shit and worrying about not only that, but am I gonna, like, is some asshole gonna pull out in front of me, or, you know, what do I gotta do tomorrow? What's my day look like? You know, I'm planning out my entire weekend. I'm planning out my entire month, you know, allowing myself, even right here, right now, knowing that I have the capability of listening to that anxiety in the background, that I can just be present with you having this experience right here, right now. And I strive to do that wherever I go. Not only, I mean, especially at work, I mean, because a lot of my work is, our work is sitting down with other people and talking and hearing their experience and sharing our own experience and trying to present solutions and trying to explore what they're willing to do and not do. And, you know, and, but striving to do that, for me, I strive to do that everywhere, and that takes me out of that identification with thought. You know, sometimes I need to take a few conscious breaths. Sometimes I need to do some other emotional regulation stuff, but I function best when I am just present in the moment, detached from all thought, and unless there's some activity or something I need to be doing, or, you know, if I'm building this or if I'm typing or writing up this, like using my mind for that purpose and not having my mind use me, but also when I'm in relationship with another human being, that I'm present in that moment and nothing is going on up here that is distracting me or taking me out of this moment, like not just with you, but with a client or with
checking your phone.
Pulling out my phone because I really don't give a shit about what you got to say.
Exactly.
You know,
my anxiety is up, so I'm gonna like bust up you know, my phone.
Happens all the time. I got a term for it. I don't know, flubbing or snubbing somebody off of the phone, flubbing or something. That shit's called. But I mean, that's that. For me, that's it, and I can and I'm grateful. Probably the thing I'm most grateful for is that I can do that without being with somebody. It's easy to be with somebody like you, somebody I have common thought with. You know, a handful of our other supports, my other supports, yours, we have separately. It's easiest to be present in those moments. Or even with somebody that we're getting to know, whether it be at work or whatever. I believe it's hardest with people that we have a history with.
Yeah.
And I believe it's hardest with ourselves. I believe the anxiety comes out strongest with people that we have history with. A lot of times parents, even if parents have been loving and supportive. You know, I'm an only child, but, you know, I got my siblings, you know, other people that are just, you know, just toxic. Not necessarily for me, but it's hardest to be present there, and it's hardest to be present and out of the scenarios I build in my head when I'm by myself. And for me, it's most important that I can live with me without needing to distract. Sometimes it's necessary. I mean, I like sitting on the couch and binge watching some Netflix. I like, I'll go out in the yard. I'll go out in the yard and do some yard work to
I still think you're present with yourself when you do that.
Maybe. I mean, I would disagree in that's a distraction. I'm not saying it's unhealthy. I think again, with balance, it becomes unhealthy if I'm coping with my anxiety and coping with my overthinking by binge watching something every fucking night of the week. I get home from work, I hit the
kicking in the disorder.
Right. Yeah. I get home from work, I hate my job, I get home, I lay down on the couch, I grab my pillow and my blanket, I binge watch 4 episodes of whatever, and I go and do it the next fucking day. And that's I think that unfortunately happens a lot. But
it's common, with streaming now and television. Television is huge. It's the greatest escape. I don't watch much TV. I'll watch a few shows with my old man, and I'll watch some sports and stuff. But for the most part, it's funny. I look back and I've spent the last 4 years alone.
Mm-hmm.
And live alone, and I can be present with myself.
Mm-hmm.
and I can do things I learned how to just roll solo.
Mm-hmm.
I can go and have dinner by myself and not need to fuck with the phone. I can do a lot of these things, but a lot of that stuff I think was just due to multiple spiritual awakenings and being comfortable in my own skin. It took me
sure.
I wouldn't even say that I'm 100% comfortable in my own skin. I think it's always a work in progress.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I had this question for you. Do you believe that someone could be almost addicted to their anxiety? That without it they wouldn't know what to do?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's absolutely. I mean, I think that's at the essence of what we're talking about. I mean,
but why would I want to get rid of it if I'm addicted to it?
Exactly. That's why most don't. That's why most don't. I mean, I
you
don't
have to
know.
wait for the anxiety to become a problem.
I think sure. I think some of it is just comfortability. It's comfortable for me. It's just what I'm used to plan out my entire week and my entire month. And I'm not judging either. I mean, this is, some, for some people they live happy, full lives, and they need that, and that adds to their life and
structure.
Right. And structure is important for me. It takes out, some level of spontaneity or it takes away from allowing the universe to come to me and hand me something else that may not be part of Justin's plan.
Yeah. I mean, I'm addicted to spontaneity quite a bit. Right. I like to just improv my life. And, I don't, it's just a way, it wasn't always that way, but it's become that way because I feel that I get the most out of life through spontaneous living, because to tell you the truth, I need the adrenaline.
Mm.
It feels good. I need the dopamine. I just need it.
Yeah.
I need to live that
Yeah.
that life,
Yeah.
because if it's all planned and routine,
Yeah.
I'll get bored.
I like both. I do best for me personally with a certain level of structure, but also allowing the universe to come to me and be spontaneous. Also, I find, at least for me and where I'm at right now, that's where I function best.
Yeah.
So
We've got 2 minutes.
we've got 2 minutes. I appreciate you inviting me on the show, man.
Last words. You wanna
Dude, you're putting too much fucking pressure on now.
No, come on
Now I got anxiety for the first time this whole.
Yeah.
But like I said, man, I haven't met Vince, but I just wanted to give a shout out to Vince if you're watching, or I'm sure you will watch. That we gave your show, did your show justice, and thank you for allowing me to sit in, and thank you, my friend, for allowing me to sit in.
Anytime, brother. Anytime.
It was a lot of fun, and so I want to let everybody know too. We have these discussions
Daily.
all the time.
We'll have to get you on again
without
We'll
being
get
in
you
front
on
of a
for again for
microphone.
sure,
But yeah, I liked it.
Good.
So
Good.
thank you.
This is the human condition.